Sounds perfect.
Good. You can call me out if we've got issues.
All right. And we are recording, by the way.
Fantastic. As we get a bigger audience, I'll make sure we remind folks. Oh, yeah. I mean, might as well be kicking off with dad jokes. You got any over there? I mean, theme is summer, right?
Summer. Oh, I had a good one that I heard the other day.
Let's do it.
So I was trying to watch the World Origami Championships on TV, but it was only available on pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm. Wah, wah.
Yeah, no, it's real bad.
Hold on. Here, bad one. What did the beach say to the tide when it came in?
Something about wave?
Long time no see.
Oh, yikes.
Yikes. Where's the gong?
Did I ever tell you the joke about the broken pencil?
You didn't.
Never mind, it's pointless.
Oh, God. Keenan, do this on audio.
Oh, not brave enough for this.
You're up here. You're on stage. You got to do
it. How many tickles does it take to make an octopus laugh? 10 tickles.
10 tickles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep, I get it. It's good. It's good.
I know. We don't have Jamie, the master. When incorporate mom jokes?
I have a joke about chemistry, but I don't think it'll get a reaction.
Very nice. All right. I'll give it one more minute, but I want to make sure we get started because we have a very full schedule today. Do we have, I'm just checking to make sure if we've got Boris in the audience.
Nice to tell you a joke about UDP.
Mm-hmm. All right, go. We got Boris. All right, I think we should kick off just for the first batch of speakers. Boris and Jerome, if you guys want to hop up on stage since you're right after announcements, so we can go right into things. So, welcome everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening, around the world. Reminder for the folks who did not get the alert when you joined, the meeting is being recorded. Will be available in the Foundation YouTube later today. We do have a note taker, Waveform. Thank you for your service today. As I mentioned, pretty packed schedule, so not sure if we're going to be able to get to anything that is beyond what's already in the schedule, but please feel free to comment in the doc on the other discussion section. We will do our best to accommodate today or next month if need be. And actually, if we can get that in the channel, Adrian or Keenan, if you can just pop in the community call agenda and notes into the chat, if you don't mind.
I'll grab it.
Thank you. Announcements quickly. So HIP 69, which was the assertion fee reduction, that is ending on July 20th, unless there was a proposal to extend, which I believe one has already been submitted. So we'll pick that up this month and put that to a vote before the 20th. Another note that has been covered, is some folks have noticed there are some bugs around the old heliumvote.com where some votes are noted as active. Core developers are aware of this and working on a fix, but please disregard, we are on top of it. Thank you, Hash. All right, that's it, at least for announcements from me. Let's get right into it. Working groups. Actually, sorry, Adrian, are you around? I'll have you come up after. I know you had a brief update from MCC, but why don't we kick off at least with Boris and the mobile working group, then Jeremy, and then Adrian, if you want to do MCC right after that. So, Boris, if you up here.
Yep, I'm
take it
here.
away.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. So the update from my side that I wanted to share is just a few words about the 3 recent HIPs that have been passed that were all worked on by the mobile working group. One is HIP 79, Mapper Rewards. Another one is, I believe it's HIP 82, which is Helium Mobile as the service provider. And what's the third HIP? Remind me the number that we're talking about. Let me pull it up 1 sec. How many HIPs I get lost in the numbers. So 84, which is hex boosting, 84.
Yep.
79, 82, and 84. So a few updates on those HIPs. 79, we talked about this quite a bit, but a short summary of it is that this allows for mappers to start earning mobile for performing mapping activity on the network. There are 2 types of mapping activity. One is something referred to as discovery mapping, which basically boils down to network subscribers sharing their locations, kind of opting in to share their location in a return for mobile rewards. And the other type is verification mapping, which basically verifying that the coverage on the network is as displayed by the modeled coverage explorer. So we expect that this HIP will most likely, from the standpoint of actually rewards being available, will come online no later than a month and a half from now. Probably going to be earlier, but you know, most of the stuff has been implemented. We're working on the smart contracts related to mapping at this point. Next HIP is HIP 82. It's really basically the community voting in Helium Mobile as the first service provider on the Helium 5G network, which allows Helium Mobile to start offloading data from its subscribers, sending data to the Helium CBRS radios. The data started flowing on June 20th already, and we see DC burn on the network as a result of it, so that's very encouraging. The most contentious part of HIP 82 that I think we've gotten a lot of feedback from the community on and have gone back and forth on quite a bit is the piece about rewardable caps. So as those who are using the Helium mobile service right now know, we currently have a single unlimited plan. And the way that the Helium network works is that people get paid per gigabyte that gets sent through their radio. So if you're selling an unlimited plan, there is sort of a gaming vector whereby you can subscribe for an expensive plan and stream Netflix through your own radio indefinitely, and getting outsized rewards. So there's been different permutation of how to preclude that gaming behavior that was discussed as part of this HIP. In the end, what's been decided is that there's going to be a concept of rewardable cap, meaning for each individual subscriber, the maximum amount of rewards that the network can reap is equal to the price of the plan that the subscriber is paying for. That gets reset every billing cycle. And we, as Helium Mobile, are required to implement a functionality for people to effectively voluntarily opt in to serving unrewardable traffic. So by default, everybody's going to be opted out. So if subscriber comes to your radio that is beyond the rewardable cap, it just won't use your radio. But if you are, nice and you want to help facilitate network growth without getting mobile rewards, you can check a checkbox inside of your cloud dashboard and say that that particular radio can also accept unrewardable traffic in addition to the rewardable traffic. Last HIP is HIP 84, text boosting. So this is very critical for driving precise deployments of the radios, because with CBRS and eventually upcoming Wi-Fi access points, we know that we're not going to be able to blanket all of the US. We need to deploy the access points in very specific areas where subscribers are using data the most. There's going to be information in the network from the discovery mappers about where specifically these locations are. And HIP 84 allows service providers such as Helium Mobile to burn mobile tokens to effectively boost certain hexes on the map, allowing certain locations to get outsized rewards. So that's the summary of the 3 key HIPs that have recently been passed by the Mobile Working Group. There's a whole bunch more that we are working on currently, but I'll pause my update here.
Perfect. Thank you, Boris. And for just again trying to keep us on time, anybody who has questions on any of 79, 82, 84, those channels are still open for discussion. Boris, I know there's another. Speak to that a little bit.
Say that again. I'm sorry, Scott. You broke up for a second.
Oh, sorry. The mobile working group. I know there was a discussion and a vote to expand the scope of the working group. Can we speak to that a little bit as well?
Yes, definitely. So the working group has started specifically as a mobile POC working group, meaning that the only scope that the mobile working group was responsible for was proof of coverage algorithms and things like hex boosting, for instance. And it's become evident that it makes sense to just make this kind of a generic, mobile sub-DAO working group that would be responsible for working on all kinds of HIPs, not necessarily related to exclusively proof of coverage. So this is going to be available for anybody to participate in via a voting process. There was a nominations process that I think has closed on June 22nd after running for, I think it was over a week. We have a whole bunch of candidates that have been nominated, and we are now considering different avenues for voting to take place. So we expect that in the next few weeks, there's going to be voting on the candidates, and there's going to be a sort of a continuously revolving 10-person working group whose mandate is going to be to sort of, work to put together various HIPs and various drafts for community consideration. So the working group is not going to be a single-handedly voting in any HIPs, but is going to be drafting HIPs or considering various community HIP proposals, cleaning them up to the point where they're ready for the community discussion, and kind of funneling them out so that we can evolve the network efficiently.
Right, excellent. And then, so vote will be going out in a few weeks around the nominations and mobile working group. Is that still open for anybody in the public that wants to generally listen in?
Obviously, yes. So everything that the working group does is open to the public. We currently meet on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Pacific. Anybody can join the event just like this community call and listen in. There is a working group fishbowl channel in Discord. Everybody can monitor it and read everything that we post there. And there's going to be new nominations and elections happening every quarter, effectively, every 3 months. And anybody who's interested in participating is free to throw their hat in the ring and self-nominate to become a member of the working group.
Excellent. And then as far as for folks who want to get involved,
You dropped out again there, Scott. Just give that one more time.
oh no, I just want to make sure from Boris, for folks that want to get involved in the mobile working group or submit for future nominations, keep an eye on the mobile working group governance channel. But anything else, Boris, that folks should know if they want to be getting involved?
No, nothing else. I mean, just monitor Discord. If you want to get involved, you can always, provide feedback without necessarily being a member of the working group. Because as I said, everything that the working group produces ultimately gets voted on and discussed by the community. But if you want to get involved formally, every 3 months there is an opportunity to just self-nominate, and there's going to be nomination-related announcements in the governance channel.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right. That was my timer going off. So, Jerm, if we want to transition over to IoT working group updates.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you named it the IoT working group, not the IoT POC working group, for the very same reasons that the mobile working group renamed itself. The IoT working group has done the same, recognizing that the subnetwork for IoT, POC and data transfer, and all of the other things that the IoT network does really go hand in hand, and a lot of the same brain trust we have working on the POC fully understands how the rest of the network works. So with that, the group almost unanimously decided to expand its scope and call itself the IoT working group. So with that, latest updates since the last time we spoke on the call about the working group. There've been ongoing discussions about what I'm going to call the service level agreement, POC or POC v12, little aliases there. But its main goal there is to reduce the incredible overdensity we have in a lot of urban areas and to promote Helium as a professional network, as the IoT network is a professional level LoRaWAN network. And to do that, it has a lot of details in there, but one of them is currently a staking component, the idea that you would stake to be one of the best hotspots in a hex, and that is there primarily to enforce the accountability, give some sort of accountability to those who really promise to stay online, up, and maintain a high level of service in that hex. That's part that is in discussion with the group. I think that's probably the most contentious part, but in general, the whole group is really committed to the principle of reducing the density, fixing the economic awards, and just the professionality of it, I think. So I'm really excited about that. There are nits, of course, always different opinions on how things should go. But with that, along those same lines of increasing the professional level of service, there is HIP 83, which we've talked about before. And last time, the Helium Geek, Ryoba, produced this wonderful tool to help people see the impacts of HIP 83. Again, it's what we call first to restore. Sorry, I'm reading reading and trying to talk at the same time. It's the first to report HIP. And so that helps reward hotspots that are on really low latency connections, or at least making certain that we tend towards low latency and that gets to be a rewardable function, because LoRaWAN does depend on some high speed, or rather low latency connections. And we want to make certain that that is an incentive that drives people forward. So that's what that HIP is about. Having that tool has made it possible to dispel some of the myths and things that we were worried about it, but there are still some remaining questions on it, particularly whether HIP-83 will make off-grids unusable. And so that's one thing that I am working on, is looking at that data to see if that's true or not. I'm hoping it's not, of course, because off-grids are a very important part of this network, especially in getting coverage to areas that are not covered anywhere else. So we'll be looking at that. Meanwhile, since last time, Nova has actually popped into the working group by the name of Professor, who is, of course, one of the designers of the original L1 blockchain we used to use, an important part of our community. And he has been working on several things there at Nova that really bring the promise of Oracle-based POC, which we switched to in February, to fruition. And that's a framework that allows us to do all sorts of neat, rapid, maybe not rapid, having plug-in modules and things that we can use to put in metrics into POC. So if we come up with HIPs that require certain metrics, or require kind of longer term associative data using graph theory, items like that, they have been working on a project to do that so that we can use it when ready. And it's really exciting stuff. Another thing that's going on, the last part of this update, is HIP 72, which is the secure concentrator HIP. We talked a lot about that in the group, and it's being restructured. So the biggest suggestion is to make it an amendment to HIP 19, stating the requirements for what an SCC would look like, and giving the MCC a lot of the responsibility of auditing and testing the hardware. There is not so much agreement on how much an SCC should get rewarded, if at all, extra. So that part is probably going to be stricken from the HIP. Dynacore, the author of the HIP, has heard all these suggestions and very receptive to them, but he is going to be very busy in the next coming weeks. So I and Sophie have taken upon ourselves to help re-edit the HIP in the way that the group has suggested, to make it, again, more of a requirements HIP, stating really down to the letter, like what the group and community thinks will be really important to have in a secure concentrator, and why it's important, the testing procedures and whatnot, and making more of like a flowchart, I think, so that the MCC can work on it. So that's really the latest with the IoT working group.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeremy, for the update there. A lot of exciting stuff happening in both groups, so appreciate the updates so we can get everything out to the community and let folks know, and keep your eye on those respective working group announcement channels in Discord. All right, keeping things moving. I know Jeremy kind of touched on this a little bit, but Neil, you are up on HIP 83 for the Restore First Responder Witness rewarding. So take it away.
So not much has changed in the HIP. There was a PR today just to define that the 14 number is not something we're setting. It's what the oracles have set as the max witness number for HIP 83. So if that were to ever change, we'd go through it. That's just been defined in the HIP. And in the unresolved questions before, we had a section, which hotspots are faster than another. And now we've linked to the HIP 83 tool that Helium Geek so lovingly prepared for this. The interesting thing about that tool now is it's the last 7 days, and it updates every day. So when you look at it, you can look at live data on the network for the last 7 days. So if you haven't seen it, I really suggest looking at it. But as far as I'm aware, it's ready to go for vote now. And that's basically it.
Excellent. Short and to the point. I think this has been a discussion for a little while. Thank you, Neil. Thanks for posting the URL in the chat. Yeah, as far as we're concerned, we have been getting things ready for the vote on this HIP. I think we are looking to push that within the next, if not this afternoon, really within the next day. So stand by for an announcement coming on HIP 83 going to a vote. And as usual, any other kind of last minute discussion can bring that right to the HIP 83 channel. But thank you, Neil, for everything you've been doing to drive on this discussion. All right, bought ourselves a couple minutes there. Let's move on. Next one up, HIP 85, Heated Lime. We've got you on stage.
Hey, thanks for having me. So yeah, I can give a brief overview of HIP 85. I think I presented at last community call, so I won't go too in depth of it. But basically, the too long didn't read of it is that this HIP proposes limiting the amount of radios that can earn modeled coverage points per hex that already has redundant coverage. So basically, it encourages deployers to not 0.5 radios in a single direction. So it limits it to maximum of 3 with a decreasing multiplier. So the radio with the highest signal strength will earn the most modeled coverage points for that 1 hex. The second radio will earn 0.75, so 75% of what it would normally earn. And then the third radio would only earn 25%. So the biggest reason for this HIP is to just encourage the spread out of coverage and encourage more coverage in different places besides just having redundant coverage. Since we kind of all noticed, in the IoT world where a lot of radios or a lot of hotspots were just set up in the same hex or providing the same coverage where it's not really beneficial to the network to have that. So this HIP kind of tries to prevent that. Another new thing that was proposed in this HIP is that the variables are considered chain variables, and instead of having a new HIP to propose changing those, the mobile working group or a different mobile governance group can propose a change, and then that change would be voted on with VE Mobile for the community. So just kind of bypasses the HIP process. I know sometimes the HIP process can be lengthy, and so just to kind of shorten that up, that's obviously new to this, so it's kind of an experiment to see how that would work in the future. But I think right now the thresholds and variables are set to a good amount, but as a mobile network expands and matures, it's definitely important to revisit those down the line. That's all I had.
All right, excellent. I think on that one again, same as the others. Let's keep conversation in. One note, I think we're not. Hash just dropped it in channel as far as technical scoping done there yet. So before we can move to a vote, just making sure we understand scope of work and what would be needed from core devs to get this across the line. So I think we can punt on that conversation to channel or DMs and keep moving through. Thank you, Heated Lime. Keith, come on up to the stage. We can move on to HIP 86. Floor is yours. I think we got you on mute.
All right, I loaded up on mute. Apologize.
No worries. Go ahead.
HIP 86 is a single issue HIP. In fact, it's a single line to double the cost of data transfer on the IoT network from 1 data credit to 2 data credits. Let it be known that I am not wedded to this. This is a result of hearing lots of complaints, in quotes, that we were too inexpensive, but I think that turns out to be a US only perspective, as Neil disavowed me of any understanding or belief that it's the same case in Europe. But the idea is that it takes 100,000 messages for a hotspot owner to earn $1. And we provide a service as an on-ramp to that data transfer. So I felt that I supported the concept of raising the price. Any questions?
I've got a few minutes on this one if folks want to chime in.
Please.
I guess I had one quick one. I know that RL from HiveMapper had mentioned that he thought that our services were undervalued, but that was more or less dealing with the GPS tooling that they were developing to determine location. Does this apply to that as well?
I would think so because I thought they were sending messages to confirm the location, their location of the camera when the camera was saving the imagery. But yes, he is one of the root causes of why I did this, in the sense of he said we were multiples too cheap. So I did it. I did it because it just needed to be done, I think. I think we're leaving money on the table, so to speak. Again, it seems to be a regional situation in the United States. And in the HIP, I refer to regional pricing should be considered if this requires any future work that could be covering this would be regional pricing. But I think as a result of Neil's beatdown, that should probably become a requirement of this so that the HIP can be considerate to the relative value in each region.
Gaz McGee, I know we just brought you up. If this was, assuming this is a question related to the HIP in discussion. Yes, no.
Sorry, that wasn't a question to me, correct?
Oh no, I was saying Gaz McGee that we just brought up on stage.
Oh, gotcha.
I don't know if that was coming up to ask a question about the HIP in discussion here. Still unmute, but I'll give it a second.
Hello?
Oh, there we go. We gotcha.
There we go. Yeah, just I want to broaden the conversation here, because the customers are being moved from paying 1 DC to paying 5 to 10 DCs as charged by the existing console marketplace. So the hotspot owners should therefore be earning a decent share of that 5 to 10x. Moving it to 2x is something, but I just feel like foundation needs to be looking at the whole situation, and perhaps we can be a bit smarter. Like, can we make, like, if core developers are here, can we attach a price to an OUI so that we can say that, you know, there's professional OUIs, there's community OUIs, different levels. Is that even a possibility?
That's a super interesting question. Where essentially, and let me just try to understand, or let's say it back to you to make sure I'm understanding. But is the idea that a specific OUI could charge a different fee, or sort of offer to pay a different fee per hotspot based on sort of priority of traffic, and then hotspots can essentially like guarantee delivery because of this sort of additional fee?
Yeah, you'd
It
have
almost like
to.
that's like an implicit like contract between the hotspot and the LNS.
They would have to pay the hotspot more, and they would charge the console owner more.
Right. Yeah. So it would sort of create like a premium flow, or, you know, some kind of quality of service flow by just paying.
Yeah. Or even community console could stay at 1, but professional console moves up.
It's an interesting concept. I haven't thought about how we would implement that, but it's definitely interesting. And, you know, just my thought on this HIP, like, I think it's just probably still too early to just arbitrarily increase the floor. And even if we did, like, a 2x increase seems kind of light, to be honest.
Yeah, and it could also be done other ways. We could make it that the first packet for a day costs 10x. Because there's a value in just getting a packet per day. But then, you know, you don't want to hurt too much the application that wants hourly or 10-minute updates. You know, I think there's just so much more to think about, and I think it's great that this HIP started the conversation. But I'm not sure. Well, I'm sure that just doubling it doesn't fix the problem. and I hope that the conversation continues and takes in that
I agree
the
with you.
console price. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I also would love to see regional pricing. I think, and that was the initial intention of the network to allow, like there was a concept early in the network, at least that we were trying to design into the system that we'd love to build someday. And this concept is that, you know, a hotspot owner can essentially specify a price or a price range, and buyers of packets can sort of accept whether or not they want to pay that price. And that could happen on a regional basis, maybe even on a per hotspot basis. And I think that would more accurately reflect the effort put into a hotspot owner. Like, you know, someone who puts a hotspot on a tower is putting quite a bit more effort than someone who might just put it on their bookshelf.
So if we're not going to be go on.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I think this is a discussion that, look, we're not going to solve on this. It's not something that we're going to move to a vote right now. There's a lot more to unpack around it. Waveform had mentioned setting up a separate panel and call that we can dive in a little bit deeper on this. So let us look at what some good options could be to maximize involvement, and we'll set up something in the next couple of weeks. More.
I mean, this sounds like a good conversation for the IoT working group, right? So we should just do it there. I don't know. Maybe I'm conflating the purpose, but it feels like a good conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly fine platform.
Okay.
All right. We will coordinate, get Jeremy, it's a flag for you. Get some coordination and figure out some times that we can maximize for involvement. And if we have to maybe do a couple to account for time zones, but otherwise, great conversation to Keith. Appreciate you kicking things off here, and others for jumping in to participate. So let's keep it going, but I'm going to move on with schedule for time. Which, Keith, this is right back to you. We are going from 86 over to 87 for proportional service provider rewards. If you want to.
So HIP 87 is sort of more of a technical solution. When the first draft of HIP 82 came about, I believe Nova, Boris, and Sasha appropriately put in something to cover for service providers on how they received their bucket of rewards. And the idea was that you had to have actually burned a one-to-one relationship of the DC to get your rewards, so that if there were only one service provider, they only burn 1 gigabit of data, and then they would get the entire bucket. However, I felt that there was a governance issue, is that we were in here, this paragraph or this idea was applying to all service providers rather than just one service provider, so felt that it should be pulled out and moved to its own HIP. Hence, I took their copy, edited it just a little bit so it could stand on its own, and here we have it. So again, single issue, not too hard, not controversial in any sense, just something that needs to be, I feel, needs to be done, so that we don't have service providers only providing a little tiny bit of service and then getting all of the service provider rewards for it.
Excellent. Thank you, Keith. Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at conversation. Everybody's it seems to be some good consensus around this, straightforward. As far as I'm concerned, we can probably move this one to a vote within the next week, ideally sooner. Unless there's any questions for right now, since we've got some extra time on this topic. I see several people typing. I'm going to give it a second. Otherwise, we can give ourselves some time back. Oh, I think we're still on the other topic. All right. Keith, no, I think this is great. Appreciate the getting this one started, clarifying on the governance area. We will get things ready to move this one to a vote very soon. So thank you. Which brings us to HIP 88 as the next item on the docket. Gateholder, we've got a good amount of time for this discussion, but if you want to kick us off, we can try to moderate on questions. Yeah, just a quick note, if you guys are still going on about 86, please try to move that to channel, and let's keep the event voice stage chat for the current topic at hand, which we're moving on to discussion round 88, and any questions in there. If you want to talk about 86, just please move that to channel so we can stay on topic. Appreciate it, folks. All right, Gateholder, floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Scott. Well, there's been some big changes in HIP 88. Primarily, we've kind of come to the conclusion of, rather than trying to mess too much with how the A score functions with the Dow score, we're moving more towards how the A score is calculated by instead of using some variables of active devices times their onboarding fees, we're just going to make it the sum basically of the onboarding fees paid, and that should change the A score to be more flexible, or allow the A score to be more flexible in terms of what devices going forward want to start charging for onboarding fees. I know there's been a lot of discussion about, trying to figure out how to basically, curtail the costs associated with onboarding, especially as it pertains to IoT devices going forward and mobile devices going forward, especially Wi-Fi devices. I kind of feel like this is the best solution to kind of let each separate sub-DAO govern how much they're onboarding their devices for, and I think that'll be the most efficient. This will be the most efficient way to do that. I'm happy to take any questions, especially regarding some of the changes that have happened. I know there's been a lot of discussion on this, and we're trying in relationship to the other HIP 89, which is kind of like a sister HIP to it, but they kind of have been formulated around each other to hopefully move the network forward in the best possible way.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback off that great explanation, Gateholder. I'm also another author of the HIP, and so is Groot. I just want to give a special thanks and shout out to Groot. He helped with a lot of the technical equation sides of the HIP in writing it, so thanks, Groot. And I think kind of what Elon Tusk alluded to in the chat, this HIP is basically kind of to fix what 51 was supposed to do. Currently, the A score in the calculation, it's basically active devices multiplied by the set onboarding fee. So that means if the IoT sub-DAO decided to lower their onboarding fee to $20, they would instantly take a hit in their A score because it's just a set defined fee. It doesn't account for any variables. So basically, this is going to look at the historical fees paid for the active devices and give credit where credit is due. So just to kind of close the loophole, as some are calling it, and make everything fair. So I think this is a great HIP that benefits everybody and the community can get behind. So, but would love to hear any other debates on it.
Before we jump into debates, I would also add the sort of technical implementation of this is that we would have to add on a per device basis or per onboard basis the amount that was paid either on chain or in an Oracle. So there's some lift here. I think it's the right call though. I think it allows for flexibility for any sub-DAO to change their fee in the future. It allows for multiple device types to exist in each sub-DAO. I mean, I think there's a lot of benefits for doing the technical work here. So definitely supportive of doing the work. But just want to call out that it will take some time to.
Bye. You just, I don't know if you meant to flip the music.
Yeah, meant to mute.
Okay.
Hopefully that makes sense. So like the technical lift makes sense. And I'm asking the authors.
I understand it. It's a probably a big lift to do, and It will take some time to be implemented. So whatever the timeline for the foundation or whoever's coding it will work.
Any questions or anybody wants to jump up on stage? I know there's been a lot of discussion in channel and a separate call. Some of the folks that have been most actively involved probably have a lot of context here, but if there's anybody who is a little bit fresher. Otherwise, it seems like we have a lot of time that we can get back here, unless there's anything else that anybody wanted to raise on it. I do think as far as like next steps on this, before vote is exactly what Abai was clarifying around the technical lift, and there are multiple ways of implementing and building this. So I think that just needs to be further clarified ahead of a vote. But I do think there's been discussion and changes to date that this is not something that we don't need to wait terribly long.
Yeah, I think, Scott, what you might be referring to there is a lazy, quote unquote, lazy way to build this, which is to do it inside of oracles and do the calculation entirely off chain. I would prefer not that we don't go down that route because then we have to unravel it at some point. I'd rather all of this calculation happen on chain.
Clamp, but I see you just joined. I know we had another item for you. Is there something that you had a question or comment on 88? Or are you just standing by till later? And you are still on mute if you are not aware. Okay, I'm going to assume standing by. Anything else on 88? Shorter discussion than I was expecting given all of the conversation in channel, but that's what those channels are there for. So I'm glad we've been hashing those out. Otherwise, we will continue discussion there, but I think that we can try to move this, move 88 along towards voting and clarifying on the technical piece again, as by clarified on the Oracle-based system versus doing everything on chain and looking at what a scope and timeline of that would look like. All right, if nothing else, I am just going to move along to 89. Where Keith and Helium, you both are already up here. So whoever wants to take the floor.
Go ahead,
Keith, would you like the honors?
Okay. HIP 89 is another single issue HIP. It is to correct, as the founders had wanted in HIP 51, was the fees for onboarding fees of mobile gateways is supposed to be $40, not $0. And the location asserts in the mobile subDAO should be $10, not $0. The HIP explains the history of this and how it came to be, or at least tries to tell the history of how it came to be, that it was a shortcut that was kept. And so we would like the mobile subDAO to stop bleeding unpaid gateways as they come onboarded. So we would just like this corrected. And we hope that HIP 88 also passes so that the calculation would also be as intended by the writers of HIP 51, 2, 3, 19, and all that refer to the location and onboarding fees. Please add anything I left out, Andy?
Nope, that was a great summary. Thanks, Keith. And yeah, the main reason for this, as Keith alluded to, is to kind of close the circle on the onboarding fees and to kind of fix the subDAO, the A score for the mobile subDAO, just to kind of prevent some bleeding there and make it more in par with how the IoT subDAO works. So thanks, Keith.
Wonderful, thank you both. Keenan, sorry, I need to pay attention. Any questions for the authors on this one that has not already been covered in channel? Or any remarks and comments?
One thing about this one, from an implementation perspective, it is possible to make these changes technically. It's not an issue. The makers will need to make sure that they have sufficient funds for this in their accounts. And if they don't, the onboards will start to fail. So it's just a thing to point out that is necessary for this HIP to actually work. Obviously, the technical lift is easy, I think, and I'm sure I'm going to eat my words someday for that one. But I think it should be fairly straightforward from a technical perspective. But the implementation requires that makers have their funds ready.
Yeah,
Would you
thanks.
like us to add that to the drawback section or anything, so that it's noted that this is a sort of drawback that the makers will have to up their 2-day buffer?
Yeah, it wouldn't be bad to call that out, and certainly if this HIP goes to a vote, I think the MCC should notify all makers that it's at a vote, and then if it passes, I think the MCC should notify them as well.
As much as we would like to not modify the HIP for days before it goes to vote, this would not be a material change, so we will add it sometime during the today.
Yep. Thanks, Keith. Yeah, and I think a good thing about that is I think Nova and Freedom Fire, the primary maker. I know there's some other makers coming in with 5G hotspots potentially, but luckily, since Nova is the main manufacturer, hopefully we can count on them hopefully to keep their maker wallet funded. So yeah, thanks.
Anybody want to chime in just as far as the relationship between, just given these two have a relationship to one another between 88 and 89?
Yeah, I can kind of chime in on that. So we initially typed in, so 88 was kind of a whole different premise to begin with. 88 was just to basically abolish the onboarding fee from the A score. And we had 88 set up like that. And then Keith and I proposed 89, which is to basically set the onboarding fee to 40, just in case 88 wouldn't pass, to get rid of the onboarding fee. But as there was, there's a lot of talk in the community and the IoT sub-DAO folks and stuff that, necessarily getting rid of the onboarding fee wasn't the right call. And after realizing here their side of it, I definitely agree, because look, there's over 40 million worth of H&T burned just for like IoT onboards. They should be getting some kind of credit for that. And so, we came together and kind of agreed, like, okay, let's find a more compromisable way to benefit both sub-DAOs in this. And so if 88 passes and 89 passes, 89 will only, technically be super effective if we can get some sort of back pay or rely on the community to back pay some of the onboarding fees to help out the A score within the DAO utility score for mobile. So that's kind of the relationship between the two HIPs and how they started and the primary intent behind them. Did I miss anything, Keith or Gateholder?
Seems to cover it. I had other philosophical issues between the two, but I'm not going to discuss them here.
Sure. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way.
Fair enough. Yep, and exactly as Max, to your point, these are independent HIPs. They're going to go through their own separate votes, not doing any sort of horse races we've done in the past. So this is going to be going through a traditional vote process.
I've got a question that probably the authors don't know, but Abai would. Is it up to the makers to decide whether they onboard a 5G capable hotspot and an IoT capable hotspot to both, or a single subnetwork?
It's an
Me as an
interesting
author,
question. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, me as an author, I would, and I think in accordance with the HIPs and like MCC maker information, um, makers are responsible for paying onboarding fees. And I know that has been traditionally held to the standard for the IoT network, and I think we want to keep the same standard for the mobile network. My personal opinion is makers should, if they're selling a Omni hotspot for both protocols, they should be responsible for paying both onboarding fees. I think Heath has a similar feeling with that, but Heath, do you agree with that?
I do. I can see in the future having the option to choose which subDAOs you might want to, the owner being applying to which subDAO they want to belong. But yes, I would be expecting the manufacturers to cover both or more than one subDAO fees if the device itself can go on one or more protocols.
Yeah, I kind of view it like as the different fee structures come to fruition, that you want to have that if you're going to participate in any particular subDAO, that you have to pay the gatekeeper on that as far as that goes.
The question wasn't whether they should or shouldn't. It's just is it the app that decides whether they deploy to both? Because I'm just thinking, for example, that someone may only want to deploy the 5G part if the location where the 5G hotspot is would be providing too much coverage in the IoT network. The option is still there for the user to do it, just whether they choose one or the other.
Right, that would be a feature of the app to, that a maker app could provide. You can choose maybe to just onboard on one, onboard on both, onboard on the other. That's all like really between the maker and the customer. This idea of I agree with this point, which is that if you're selling an omni protocol or a multi-protocol hotspot, you should be fulfilling that with your customers. I don't necessarily think the network can there isn't a great way to very, very precisely go after a maker who's not fulfilling those like kind of customer service promises. But I can imagine that there's that's quite a bit of a customer service like pain if they fail to do so, right? So I would be surprised if customers would be okay. Any customer would be okay with kind of getting something that was the way that I think someone described it the other day as like buying an RC car that said batteries included and only getting one of the batteries instead of two. Like that's just messed up. And I would not be happy about that as a customer, and I would try to take whatever sort of whatever I'm able to do, whether it be chargebacks, like going through customer service, any of the above. Like I would be trying to go through those processes if I got a device that was kind of half done.
And another perspective to your question, Waveform, is that it is my understanding that if HIP 89 passes, that the very next mobile gateway that is onboarded would indeed pay for both, that the programming is already there to pay for both subDAOs, and so that it would indeed cost $80 to onboard the next one after this is applied.
My understanding too, yes.
All right. Anything else in the conversation?
All right, I got off easy. 3 hips
right.
and no grouling.
Are we going to resolve the back page issue as part of this HIP?
No.
That's a separate thing. That I don't know if that'll need to be further communicated in a different HIP, but HIP 88 is solely just to correctly set the onboarding fee to 40. If HIP
89.
88 passes, then the mobile sub-DAO will try, probably it's in their best interest to try to figure out if back pay is possible. We're kind of slowly in the works of that now to see if that's feasible, but it kind of relies on 88 passing if it makes sense or not. There's also some different viewpoints on that, whether if HIP 88 passes, if it's even relevant, or if we still should. So there's definitely a lot of discussion in the mobile sub-DAO community for that. So definitely, express your concerns and let us know what you think.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Anything else before we move on? Oh, that was my timer going off. All right. So yeah, for an 89, I think most of the discussion. Yeah, keep discussion in channel for now. I think on this one, same. Probably can start to look again, just given the lack of the technical overhead. This is mostly a MCC project around maker coordination. Expect we can move this one to a vote relatively soon. Last call. Anything else? Otherwise, I'll move on. Okay, so backing up, this one's on me. Waveform, if you want to jump in with an MCC update, as I missed that in the earlier announcements, I know you're subbing in for Sophie.
Yes, there wasn't much from Sophie, but there's a lot of concern at the moment over makers not funding their wallets. So Sophie is creating a user visible spreadsheet of the contact status that the MCC is doing with the different vendors, which I will post shortly. There's also when they are contacted about the couple of issues that we're probably seeing at the moment, which is some IoT hotspot vendors trying to onboard their IoT hotspots as mobile hotspots as well. And there's possibly another issue where certain makers just need to tweak their app to ensure that hotspots that were already created, the NFT created, but the onboard failed due to a lack of funds, that a reattempt of the onboard does not try to recreate the NFT. If the NFT already exists, it just retries the onboard. So those are the two things that we're going to be looking at.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on, since we've cleared through an all hips and actor discussion, we've got a couple of proposals that we can do quick review on. I think this first one is legitimately should take no time at all. Proposal to continue HIP 89 indefinitely. No, Master, if you anything that you want to say on that, I think it's pretty straightforward, but I don't know if you wanted to contribute anything there. And I think we got you up here now.
Hello.
Yep, we got you. Stage is yours.
There's not really much to say. The halving's coming up 10 days. Hello.
Yep, we lost you for a sec. Go ahead.
Not really much to say. The halving comes, I think it's 10 days after HIP 69 finishes. At current prices, sorry, not current prices, at current hotspot token levels, after the halving, you'll be looking at, I think it's around 4 months to recoup the assert fee I don't think it's been gamed since it's been lowered, but I don't really have any real data to show that. I just don't. The data that I've seen shows there's not really a mass uptake in asserts. So I just think we should probably just best to leave it where it is at $5.
All right, pretty straightforward. I think what we will do is get that yeah, I guess, Hash, what do you think? Do we want to have a channel on this for a few days before we move directly to I know this is still in does not have its own dedicated channel. We could just discuss in 69 and HIP 69 channel.
It's a separate HIP. We should just do a separate channel for it and then and do the thing. But but as I mentioned in chat, like the technical lift of leaving it as it is 0. There's effectively no work to do.
Perfect. So I think what we'll do, open a channel on this one, have a discussion that we can do for, let's say a week or two, just in case there is, just want to make sure we have enough discussion around it. But otherwise, we've got until July 20th in this thing. So let's make sure we've got a buffer for a voting period and the technical change, which is pretty light. So can make sure we have a discussion for, week plus on that. So channel will be open soon. Thank you, Nosemaster, for putting that up.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, next one in review. Reset on CrowdSpot. Clamp it. We already have you up here. Take it away. Don't have audio. Clamp, can you hear us okay? Or do you want to just test on your mic there? Yeah, unfortunately can't hear. So we may have to, yeah, maybe do a quick restart. We can have you come back in. And in the meantime, let's give it a second.
Okay, check. Yeah, I had to disconnect.
We gotcha. Go away. Take it away.
All right, I'm going to start with just presenting what the problem is. There's a severe backlog of submissions on CrowdSpot. CrowdSpot is the website where people go that have been put on the deny list that want to get off the deny list. The backlog on CrowdSpot is about 4,000 submissions, representing about 4,600 hotspots. The backlog is over 5 months right now. There's over 1,000. There's over 1,100 hotspots that have waited over 5 months for a review. And that list just keeps getting longer and longer each day. So there have been a number of HIPs and a number of PRs that were aimed at rebuilding the way we do deny list. HIP 40, HIP 66, and a few PRs that never got HIP numbers. One of those was one that I pinned about a month ago. It was bulky. It was code intensive. It was going to require a lot of resources. And that leads right back to what the initial problem is that there are not enough resources to handle the CrowdSpot submissions as is. So in an effort to try to get things done more expediently, as we're 5 months since the last algorithmic detection was ran, we're 4,000 submissions backlogged. Another route was proposed, and that route is a selective rollback of the last massive deposit to the deny list. The deposit was about 20,000 hotspots that were done in January. There are about 4,000 of those, 4,600 of those that are still pending on CrowdSpot to be reviewed by a human review team. The human review team is under-resourced, understaffed, and the wait time is still another 5 or 10 months to have those reviews looked at. So in an effort to move the ball along, my current PR proposes that we roll back about 4,000 hotspots, remove them from the deny list, wait a small period of time, 14 days, and then run the algorithmic detection again. Another issue that it's lying out there is that there are about 35,000 gaming hotspots that are identified on the network, but have yet to be added to the deny list because of this 5-month backlog existing with the crowdspot.io. So this week I'd heard rumor that the foundation was looking at this and looking at another way of handling the deny list and the backlog of CrowdSpot without a PR at all. But I haven't heard any update from that. If anyone with the foundation is aware of new information that could render my proposed HIP as not needed, and we've got a new pathway, that'd be awesome also.
We just lost your audio again.
Yeah.
Clamp, but we still got you?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, yeah. Sorry, we just cut out for a little bit at the end there.
At what part did I drop off? I said I was hoping that someone from the foundation would have an update from their end that there was some new information that would render my HIP as not needed at all.
Yeah, I don't think we have a solution to this that is sort of short term. I think and I don't want to jump into the long term solution, or at least a proposed long term solution here, because I think there's this proposal should kind of stand on its own merit, which I think specifically, there is a massive backlog. I don't think that's a good thing, and I think this is one solution to to kind of clear the backlog, just do a reset. And the deny list can be added to again. So I think it's reasonable to propose this. And so if just for context for folks that might not know the history here, like the deny list was something that was authorized by vote to be run on the network. There's a group of unpaid reviewers that are basically kind of trying to process this. A bunch of those reviewers are uninterested in doing the work because people have been not very nice, is maybe the cleanest way to say that, and some folks in the chat have other ways to say it as well, which I think is worth looking at. But I think this is definitely a short-term solution. And long-term, I don't think we should expect one entity on the network to be responsible for the deny list. I think it should be a community oriented approach. And happy to talk one-on-one or sort of in channels about different ideas here, but certainly a system that allows a hotspot owner to be able to ask a community and that to review something, and reviewers from the community incentivized to actually review that work. I think that a system like that would be a good thing, rather than going into the details.
So my HIP does acknowledge the fact that the deny list is a living document, and that it can be undone, and redone through a GitHub process.
Yep, that's right. And yeah, so I think let's. I feel like the current version of this HIP is worth discussion. I think we should talk about it.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, it's PR 721. And yeah, I'd very much like to see it move to a HIP number and have its own Discord channel and open discussion for it.
All right.
Well, thanks for putting this together and also like doing the cut down version too. I think it's a lot easier to talk about that one, and then the larger PR that you have, I think we should also have a separate conversation about that one. It's an interesting idea, and we should.
Okay, the one that I pinned last month was PR 652, I believe. That was the one where I proposed that any owner that wanted to place a submission on CrowdSpot would have to have a staked bond. Let's say, for sake of discussion, 5 HNT. And that bond would be an attestation to the network that you're a good actor on the network. That bond could be returned to you if it's found that you were not a gamer. It could be revoked or forfeited if it was ultimately found that you are a gamer. Also in that PR, there was the policy of to and banned. In the current state of CrowdSpot, is it once you've been denied, you can just open another request, and once that one's been denied, you can open another request. So the to and banned policy would effectively close that revolving door of submissions to CrowdSpot and take some of the workload off of the volunteer review team. To be perfectly honest with you guys, I wrote that entire PR, and 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago or something like that, I had a talk with Waveform, and he said, look, this is the nuts and bolts of this. It's really bulky. It's going to require a lot of coding in 3 different systems. You're proposing changes to the wallet, to the back end, to the front end of CrowdSpot. It's going to require a large commitment of coders and developers to write this. And it's going to take a very long time. So in the interest of doing something expeditiously, solving this problem in a short term, find another way of doing this. Let's talk about it, just a small rollback, and that'll get through the HIP process much quicker.
Yep, totally agree. Like let's definitely separate the conversation.
All right. I like that what Hacken just wrote on here right here is that this is an iterative process, meaning that we run the algorithmic detection or the machine learning model, and then we tweak it and we run it again, and we tweak it and we run it again. It's an iterative process. At the current date, we haven't run a new iteration of that algorithmic detection in 170 days, or 165 days, 5.5 months. So, let's move the ball on that. It doesn't have to be perfect each time we run it. There are going to be people that are caught false positively, and we have a mechanism in place for them to get a human review. My HIP proposes to rerun the algorithmic detection on an unscheduled, unannounced cycle between 14 and 30 days. Don't let the gamers know that we're coming and we're going to run this detection again, and try to keep the submissions to CrowdSpot down to a manageable number. Right now, 4,600 hotspots in 5 months backlog is not manageable. We got to reset, new POC data, new algorithmic detection, and move the ball forward.
Yeah, but thank you very much. Really appreciate you driving the discussion on this to get us to the next place. So again, just echoing Abaya and splitting the discussion. The HIP dealing with backlog, we'll get a channel opened and discuss that, and then more on fixes going forward and how we can move this into a more distributed community effort. So thank you, Clampett.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we've got 10 minutes left. The last item on the agenda here, which I'm impressed we made it all the way through, is the Elon Tusk. You want to jump up on stage to talk about pre-mine calculation and emission error?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Sweet. Simply put, there was a couple different issues, but one was an error, one was a bug, where during the pre-mine issuance of tokens, there were a lot of hotspots that didn't get the tokens that had met the requirements for doing so. So, talked with Hashcode the other day, and we hammered out a bit of a bullet-pointed start for a HIP to correct that. Basically, in a nutshell, and I just put up the link for you so you can read along. The idea is to create a wallet that anybody can donate tokens to, and basically that wallet will be used to fund paying the pre-mine to those hotspots that should have gotten it in the first place.
Yeah, and just to add to that, one of the proposals around there's been a couple of proposals around the network around can you take tokens out of a wallet on the network and sort of distribute it to the community. I think what's important here is that I don't think it's a good idea for us as a community to consider code that takes tokens out of anyone's wallet. I think it creates a slippery slope, but I think this HIP, as it's structured, I think is reasonable. And the IoT that would go back to go specifically to the hotspot owners who should have been paid out through the pre-mine will come out of the IoT operations fund from the foundation. Like we will put the donation in for this one. And if anyone else wants to add to that, great. But we're intending to do it if this HIP gets to real state. I think it requires that it requires we have an agreement around the community of exactly who's owed. There's been some data analysis that's been done. I did a little bit of this work, and some other folks in the community, Elon Tusk, and some others have been sort of doing the follow-up work for this. So I want to make sure that we have a very, very clear way to specify exactly who is owed. And we sort of should close the issue ASAP.
All right, thank you both. Just spotting some of the chatter here. Anything that is specific questions on the issue? All right. I'm not seeing anything substantive. So, all right, what are next steps in this one? Hash, this is coming up as a HIP?
Yeah, I think Tusk is going to finish writing this out. I think there needs to be some data analysis, or someone needs to sort of confirm the data analysis is correct before we bring it to a vote, and I think we vote.
Yeah, there's a thread off the foundation channel if anyone is curious where we've been discussing this and pulling up data.
Yeah, we can stand up a channel around this one and pull that in there. Leo, you wanted to speak?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, just keeping an eye on time. We got 5 minutes, so go ahead. I just want to make sure we're being efficient.
No, I'm just trying to understand what this wallet, what happens if this wallet doesn't get funded to the extent that is required.
It will get funded by the foundation. They've already committed to that. That's what Hashcode just said just a few minutes ago.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, I think we got clear next steps on this one. 5 minutes to go. We actually, Deutsche Telekom IoT creators. And by you spoke with Fierce Wireless. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, we have not a lot of time left, but happy to talk about it. Deutsche Telekom has a platform called IoT Creators, which is somewhat well known in the IoT space. They support NB-IoT, LTE-M, and some other platforms too, if I remember correctly. They announced today that they are supporting Helium, specifically becoming a Helium LNS. It's a premium product, right? But I think that's important that the network has a variety of options. Some community built, maybe some premium products, and some stuff in between. So I'm excited that they're participating in the Helium network. They're going to enable builders. I think it's certainly validation for the Helium network that someone like Deutsche Telekom would want to stand up an LNS in our ecosystem. So super excited about it. That we'll have kind of more options for folks. Yeah.
Yep, definitely exciting. Good to see our LNS ecosystem expanding, especially adding Deutsche Telekom as one of the providers. But again, we want to make sure we have a good, diverse range of options across geographies. So excited to see that. More good validation for the network. Otherwise, I think that officially brings us to the end of the agenda. So I want to thank everybody for, I know we had a lot to get through today, so thank you to all the speakers. Thank you, Waveform, on all your note-taking. Please continue discussions in HIP channels as usual. We will get 83 will be the next one that is going to get pushed toward a vote either later today or by tomorrow. So please participate, and we will see everyone next month. Thank you all. Have a great day and rest of your week.